All right, so, and Reese, by the way, questions that come in on the beach and or the flood plan, we won't hand them over to you. Reese gets everything else, so. All right, so as I said, this is an opportunity, because of the nature of the forum, what I did was, we went back, myself and some of the trustees, through all of your emails, all of your comments into the inboxes. Feedback, informal, we get a lot of that. It's amazing how many times people will grab me on the beach. Maybe it's because of the tie-dye shirts I wear, I don't know. But they'll ask something, they want to know something. So, and that's true of many of the trustees. So we tried to accumulate it all into a number of questions. And for that, as I said, I don't think these folks next to me needed an introduction, but just in case, Mayor Judy, Davies-Dunhour, Councilman Reese. I'm going to ask the questions, they're going to respond, and if you see them doing this, the decision was in advance that if they're not sure who's going to answer, they're going to do rock, paper, scissors to decide. So if you see this, don't worry. They're not getting ready to punch each other. They're just trying to figure out who's going to answer the question. So, all right, let me start, and I'll let you two decide how to go at it. So let's talk about the beach for a second. Doug just gave us quite an input. A lot about the beach. There's been a lot written about the beach issues, and again, it's not unique to Stone Harbor. I think Jeff and Doug pointed out this is an issue up and down the Jersey Shore as well as much of the rest of the coast. From the perspective, Mayor Judy, of yourself sitting in the mayor's chair and Reese as a member of council, what do you feel? What do you see? What are you thinking about in terms of how we deal with what I personally think is one of our most valuable assets, and that is our beach?
So one thing, for those who want to have a history of how this began, where we were able to use Hereford Inlet, federal dollars as a borough area, there is a very well-written opinion piece in the Herald this week that really succinctly tells the story from start to finish, and the position that the two positions that are opposing one another in the federal government, and that we're ending up being somewhat a victim of that, the fact that these federal agencies actually are opposing one another in what their missions are. So, you know how usually you look in the paper and you're like, I encourage everybody to read this because it is really well done, and it will fill in a lot of gaps, and it'll tell you the entire history. It is frustrating to say the least, because there's a political aspect to it. So when there was a Republican leadership, the Department of the Interior opened it up for federal dollars. When there began a Democrat leadership, it was closed again. So that's just a level of frustration that we have to face, where it is not truly what is in the best interest of us as homeowners or what is in the best interest of the shoreline. It ends up being politics in Washington, and we feel like we bang our head against the wall with that. We have engaged Jeff Andrew, and Jeff Andrew has been engaged from the start, regardless of what party he was affiliated with at the time. We've been engaging him from the start. So, frustrating to say the least. The politics is quite disappointing. One of the issues that we also face is, if this is permitted here in the state of New Jersey, to take sand from a CBRA and take it out of that CBRA, if that was to be translated into other states where it would actually be supporting development, they say this is a slippery slope. You allow New Jersey, next thing you know, it's happening in South Carolina, it's happening in North Carolina. So unfortunately, we're also not being viewed as our particular issues here. That point is a thriving ecosystem for threatened and endangered species as a direct result of beach replenishment. So none of this makes sense. The only other thing that I can say is we will continue to engage our state and federal leadership, and hopefully somewhere along the line somebody has the wisdom to see that we're in a unique position here in Stone Harbor with this point. The other thing, of course, is now we have Doug Gaffney, and as you can see, he is well versed in coastal engineering, and we will be relying on his expertise to help us do some other things along the way while we try to see how we can get help financially there.
I would just want to add that I think it's universally accepted and known through council and with Mayor Judy and the community, the beaches and the bay are the most critical asset that we have in the community. So that's our primary focus as we look at different priorities. The beach and bay always make it pretty much to the top. The other thing I would say is that there's still a lot of questions. I think as you see in some of the presentations, that it's kind of a moving, fluid target. But regardless, it's a lot of money, and it takes time. So you can't. You have to have a well-planned. Just have a good plan, and I think we're working on getting that plan developed. And from that will be an excellent springboard for us to be able to move forward.
And by the way, I don't know if any of you are hearing the rumbling. Just so you know, we were trying to emulate the sounds of the beach, the waves crashing against the beach for Doug's talk. I'm not sure that we got it quite right, but we'll keep working on it. So maybe the next meeting we'll get it right. And just a quick plug for any of you that aren't aware of it, the Cape May County Herald. It's an excellent source of information about what's going on. There is an online version in addition to, of course, the hard copy you can pick up. So there's a gentleman by the name of Vince Conti that seems to cover a lot of things in and around this area, and I found some of his reporting and the information he provides to be very, very helpful. So just a plug for the Herald, if you want to stay abreast of what's going on, particularly in the off season, it's an excellent source.
And Vince Conti is the author of the opinion piece that I referenced, however, with no byline.
Right.
So, but Vince is, he's the author of that piece, and it is excellent.
So Judy, while you have it, just curious, I'm not going to throw a question as much as just any reaction, any input to Mark's presentation. I know that you and Council have been deeply involved in the development of this flood master plan for a number of years, and it was exciting to see it actually come forward in terms of, okay, there are solutions, there are ideas. They ain't cheap, and they may not be easy, but you know that we have to deal with the flooding. I have a personal interest in the flooding because a good friend of mine owns a home in Stone Harbor, which often is impacted by flooding. And you might say, yeah, we know a lot of people too. The difference is he's a jeweler, and so he takes good care of me. So if he's told me if I don't get the flooding under control, he's going to stop taking care of me, and my wife isn't going to be happy. So please, just for nothing else, can you make sure we get the flooding under control? But seriously, though, your sort of reactions and thoughts on how we're going forward from here.
You are correct in that I have been following the creation of this master plan, the flood master plan, since I've been mayor, since 2017. And Mark de Blasio has been a part of that discussion since 2017. We are fortunate that Mark does pretty much know every one of our streets, the infrastructure that lies under pretty much every one of our streets. He has a lot of institutional knowledge. He has a lot of contacts. As you can see from his resume, he's well educated, he's well informed, and he is, what's the word I'm looking for? Experienced. No, not handsome. And experienced. Now, he's a little odd looking, but we deal with that. Anyway, I feel that, of course, the first thing that strikes everybody, myself included, is the price tag. And the presentation this morning was excellent. I think it was done in a way that the layman can understand the engineering that needs to take place, and the layman can understand, you know, what different things need to happen without using engineering terms and without going overboard. I thought the presentation was excellent. Again, the price tag is scary. The difference between the flood mitigation and the beach replenishment is, one of the aspects with the beach replenishment is that seems like you throw $6 million at something and then 2 years later it's gone and you need another $6 million. Where with the flood mitigation plan, these structures are put in place and they remain in place. So it's not like once we bring the bulkheads up, 2 years from now we got to bring them up again. What we need to do is plan for what Rutgers right now, the study from Rutgers is saying we should plan for. And that's what our plan is suggesting. So it's different in that you don't continually throw money at it like you do the beach, which I know there's some folks that say that, gosh, you put sand on the beach only for it to drift away, and then you put that same amount of money out 3 years down the road. It is a very expensive proposition. We do need to look at it. One of the ways we were thinking of financing it at one time was that project that was continually referred to as Stone Harbor West, where we would take properties within Stone Harbor that Public Works is presently operating on, sell it, buy something offshore so we could move some storage and some operations. That was an idea that I still feel should continue to be looked into. We could realize, because the other thing is when your ratables go up, that doesn't mean that amount of money goes into your budget and you now can spend that amount, the ratable. You only can spend whatever taxes, increased taxes come along with that ratable. As opposed to selling a property, you sell it and you get the ratable. So that idea of Stone Harbor West, in my opinion, still needs to be pursued. And that's a way that we could finance part of it, maybe not all of it, but because what it's going to come down to is it's going to come down onto us, the taxpayer. And you saw how big that is. So if there's a way we can take, say, $20 million off that price tag by selling some assets and getting a ratable and improving the life for those who live on those blocks that have Public Works operating around them, I think that would be a win-win and would be a help for the borough.
Just in that regard, let me interject. So one of the points, many of you, I hope, have seen this is, first off, I should say, to the point of finance, on behalf of all the residents and taxpayers, we probably should thank you for a budget that this year has no tax increase. That's a welcome change, I'm sure, for many people. But it doesn't alleviate the fact that, to your point, there's some very, very significant expenditures. And in fact, the financial study that Jeff referred to that we worked on in collaboration with the CFO and the borough administrator, and Reese was very involved in it, showed that in order to pay for the investments that are going to be necessary in the flood master plan and in other aspects of sustainability, and that is without any asset sales or any change like that, we may be looking at tax increases of up to 45% in the next 5 years. Is what will be necessary, and that's in addition to what Jeff talked about in terms of the debt increases. So these are big ticket items, they're expensive, they're cost us to operate, but they're fundamental because frankly, if we don't deal with the flooding, if we don't deal with the beach erosion, if we don't maintain our bays, we've got substantial investments in property. So Judy, you've touched on one aspect, which is the idea of Stone Harbor West and the idea of effectively monetizing some of the hard assets. But, Reese, to that point around finances, any other thoughts, any direction, strategies you're thinking about?
Well, yes, I agree that the flood master plan really becomes a key investment, and it's really a long-term investment, number one. And secondly, I think that there are other opportunities out there for some grants, both with the federal infrastructure plan that is available as well as the I-Bank. And we are pursuing those grants. And I would mention that the financial plan that the Chappelle Group put together does not include any of those potential grants. So yes, it's a lot of money no matter how you look at it, but we want to make every effort to be able to minimize the investment by pursuing grants that are available to help fund these very expensive projects.
So staying on the line of finance for a moment, just sort of conceptually, so if we look at the past year in Stone Harbor, been a number of examples of modifications, changes, increases in various what I'll call user type fees. So we're all aware that beach tag fees were increased. You may not be aware, but the whole purpose, the thinking behind that was such that the beach tag revenues would generate sufficient funds to pay for the beach patrol. So effectively funding the beach patrol by the beach users, that is the beach tag fees. at the same time, other fees, like the rec fees, we've all been recently experiencing different discussions around various recreational fees, such as tennis, pickleball, etc. But conceptually, it seems that, or strategically, it seems that you've started to move in the direction of looking at user fees, I'll call it, as one source of revenues to avoid having, or to reduce maybe the pressure on property taxes. Because if we don't pay for it from the user fee, we got to pay for it out of the property taxes that you collect. Those are the borough's basic two sources of revenue. So my question is really looking forward, other things that you're exploring, thinking about, looking at, what else might the members anticipate in terms of, first off, is this a strategy, but second off, continuing to execute on that strategy?
It is a matter of, in doing the budget, where you start to review the entire budget and to see how you can increase revenue in a way other than taxes. Now, to go to the beach tags, for example, when beach tags were initially instituted so many years ago in New Jersey, you were not permitted, and you still are not permitted, to charge in excess of what it takes for you to maintain your beaches. So what we saw is we were falling very well short of maintaining our beaches, and the beach tag revenue was now no longer maintaining our beaches. It was the beach tag revenue plus your taxes. So we're trying to rein that back into where the beach tag revenue covers the cost of maintaining the beaches. So we can't just come out of the gates and say we're going to charge $200 for beach tags just to get some extra money. We cannot collect more money than it takes to maintain the beaches. And it is a strategy where when you start to look at everybody in this room is affected by this flood mitigation plan, and you will be paying for it. The roads, we all use the roads. We all avail ourselves of the fire company, the police department. However, we do not all avail ourselves of the pickleball courts or the beach. So it's trying to spread that cost along just what it's called, a user fee. So we've started with the recreation department, and those of you who are very engaged, I'm sure you saw that caused a little bit of a firestorm. I still maintain that the increase, although it seems very high because it was a 300% increase, however, when it's all said and done, that amount of money is not a huge burden on someone, and it is a recreation activity. And many folks in here, I'm sure, you pay a lot of money for your recreation activity of choice. I'm sure you do, especially if you're a golfer. Imagine what you're paying to golf. So it is a strategy, and it also is something that the SHPOA, this membership asked us to look at when they initiated, SHPOA initiated a survey saying, what should the borough be looking at to bring in revenue other than tax dollars? And looking at user fees was something that this organization particularly asked us to look at.
I think another way that you can look at it is consider it from an accounting term is activity-based accounting. And that's where possible, try and understand what the true cost of a certain activity is, and then when possible to be able to equate the revenue and the expenses and match them up. Just a point, I think, as far as the beach tags, the fees generated from the beach tag offset the cost of the lifeguards and the beach taggers, but in no way do they capture any of the costs that we're talking about as far as the beach replenishment and beach nourishment. So, and so just again, it's covering part of the cost to maintain the beach, but certainly not the entire cost. I think that the other thing that we're looking at is maybe some other opportunities to generate revenue, and just an example we'll suggest is perhaps like a resort fee that is charged in many communities for basically the renters that come into town will pay a resort fee, and that can also maybe an opportunity for us to generate some additional revenue. So we are looking at different opportunities, not only as far as the expenses, but also the revenue.
Reese, I believe Cape May, is it Cape May that already has that sort of occupancy tax, whatever they call it?
That's correct. Cape May does have a resort fee, whatever you want to call it.
A couple points just on that in that regard, and I'm going to probably not get the numbers exactly correct, but I'm going to try to. Somebody had a question earlier about the cost of using only state money, not federal money. So Jeff, keep me in line, but the total cost of a beach renourishment, if it's done under the federal program, the core program, the federal government pays for half of it, 60%.
If we use federal money, it's 9 cents on the dollar.
Okay, right, because the federal government pays for 60% of it, and then the state pays for like 3/4 of what the federal government doesn't pay for. I don't know if that's me or not. So if you do the math backwards, and Judy just said that it was about $6 million the last time I think we did the full beach fill. So if that's only 10%, 1 cent, 10 cents on the dollar, you do the math in terms of what the cost of a sort of full beach renourishment is. So back to the gentleman's question that earlier about, why do we need federal dollars? Well, I don't know that we could generate sufficient resources if we don't have the federal dollars, and certainly the state's quite limited in terms of what they'll put in. So the state might even come to the point and say, sorry guys, we're not even going to participate because we don't have the resources. The state's resources are also quite limited in that regard. Also, a point on the beach tags. There was an article probably about 6 months ago, maybe it was last fall, in NJ.com, which is effectively the Star Ledger from Newark. It's their online edition. And there was some complaints about beach fees in the northern communities. And so they had this like complete listing of beach tag fees for every sort of beach community up and down the Jersey Shore. Let me rest assured, let me assure you that our beach tag fees in this area, Stone Harbor, Avalon, etc., were multiples less than what people were paying in the northern towns. So again, if that's the requirement that the beach tag fees can only be used to cover beach tag costs, beach costs, that's telling me that in the northern communities, their beach costs must be multiples of what we're incurring in Stone Harbor, Avalon, etc.
It just occurs to me, I had a knee replacement and I put the mic near the knee, and I think maybe that's causing all the feedback.
So you haven't flown for a while. Then wait till the first time you go through security. The TSA people have to put you aside. So, all right, look, in the interest of time, I have kind of an omnibus, or I'm just going to throw it out there and allow you to comment as you see fit. So I was thinking about everything that went on this past year since we met in September. And I kind of listed out some of the things that have happened in Stone Harbor, the activities of mayor and council. So we had a new public works director, by the way, who I've been introduced to. He's, I think, a professional engineer, which is an excellent selection because he can provide a lot of support to the borough. There was some discussions around, there's changes to the traffic collection ordinances you probably hopefully are aware of. If you've been reading what we've been sending out and what the borough's been publicizing, you'll know that. The lot grading ordinance is, I think, pretty close to fruition, that modification. And I believe, Mark, you mentioned the lot grading ordinance is an important part of the overall flood master plan in trying to deal with flooding. There's a new lawn watering ordinance. Jeff talked about that very briefly. There's some modifications to the beach vehicle permitting processes. There was also, I think, some effort made, which I don't believe was successful, around modification of the new ordinance related to the homes on the courts. So when you add that to what you've just seen, frankly, if I were mayor and council, I think I'd probably go on vacation the rest of the year because I'd be tired. But I know you won't do that, so I think it's my way. So just kind of looking forward, what can members expect, or what's on the horizon, say, for the rest of the summer and the rest of 2022?
That is a lot of things that you just talked about. You're going to see for the rest of the summer, we're in the middle of, we have introduced the changes to the trash ordinance. We have introduced the changes to the vehicles on the beach, that ordinance. You'll see them for their final vote in about a month on both of them. I do think it's important to note these personnel changes that you're going to see in town, bringing on a new public works director, and he's going to be starting at the beginning of July. Also, you're going to see this summer a new recreation director. and it's a young woman who brings 10 years of experience in health and fitness and also in corporate wellness. So that's going to be a great addition to the borough. One thing, and she's probably going to kill me, but we're going to see a change in the clerk's office for the first time in 49 and a half years. And our borough clerk, Suzanne Stanford, she's here, she will be retiring. So that's a huge personnel change for Stone Harbor. So we should acknowledge, stand up, I know you're hating me right now, but that's okay. 49 and a half years working for the borough of Stone Harbor. So that's a personnel change that's going to be quite significant.
Did she start working for the borough when she was about 5 years old?
Oh, yes, yes. But there are big personnel changes. I feel like we've built a really good team up that's going to be bringing forward. You can see from these professionals that your money is paying for. You can see by their presentations and their knowledge that we do our best to find the best people to fill these positions, to help move us forward. We're in a unique situation here in Stone Harbor where, yes, we are a small town, but we're a small town with big financial issues that we have to address. And as you can see by these two gentlemen, we do our best to find the best. So as far as Rich laid them all out, the ordinance changes, and I've talked about the personnel changes, and anything you'd like to add?
I also, one of the things that we're just completing is the water meter replacements. So that's a huge change for us, really bringing the water meters up to the current standard that will allow wireless transmission, should allow the opportunity to be able to monitor the water use on an individual basis, and not require the Public Works Department to go out to take manual water readings. So it was a significant expense. I think all in it's probably approaching $1.5 million to be able to get that done, but it was a necessary change and really a very good change that will be beneficial for all of us. The other thing is that, let me just throw out the name of the new Public Works Director is Manny Parada. He does have a professional engineering degree, but he also has an extensive background in public works. So, and the other thing I found quite interesting is the last three candidates that we interviewed for that position, all three of them wanted to come to work at Stone Harbor because of what it offers. And so Stone Harbor is an attraction for the workforce. We've got a fantastic group of borough employees, very dedicated, work hard, and a great attitude. And it's just a fabulous place to come to work, much less where we live.
Reese, I think maybe to emphasize that, just a couple points at recent meetings. So I believe it was reported at the last meeting that the Public Works Department has been able to fill the demands for seasonal trash collection. So the twice-a-week trash collection is certainly back on, but in addition, as you all know, for the last year or so, there's been some struggles in terms of attracting the seasonal workforce, and that problem seems to be dealt with. Also, we understand from Captain Sandy Pasacco of the Beach Patrol that they're quite happy with both the numbers and the quality of the candidates they've had for lifeguards for this year. That's not something that a lot of communities can say, ladies and gentlemen. I can tell you that our neighboring communities are struggling in fulfilling their demands for lifeguards. And I think, again, I'll attribute that both to the reputation of the Beach Patrol in Stone Harbor and the reputation of Public Works, but also the efforts made by folks to make sure that adequate resources were brought in to meet the seasonal demands.
And I'd just add to that, especially with Public Works, we made some innovative changes to help attract and retain the seasonal employees. And so, as Rich mentioned, we are fully staffed. Right now we have 21 seasonal Public Works employees, and that is allowing us to be able to collect the trash twice a week. And I think it's, that's a service that is really valued by everyone here.
Another thing that we just authorized in the last couple of days is increased lifeguard coverage beyond the 5 o'clock hour by several of the senior guards will be on, and they're going to be monitoring the beach because of these rip tides that are now happening. And I'm sure that you're all well aware that up and down the coast now, there's these issues with folks that are going in and swimming when the lifeguards aren't on duty, and they're getting themselves in trouble. So we are just authorizing an emergency appropriation to have increased coverage of the beach while this equilibrium or disequilibrium works itself out.
Do you have any sense of how that's going to work? Will there be certain beaches open after hours, or will the guards be kind of patrolling up and down the beach, kind of the way they do in September? I know where they patrol with the sand crabs, and they keep an eye on them.
My understanding is, and correct me if I'm wrong, they're not going to be patrolling, or are they?
We're still working out the details on it, but one option is to have the certified lifeguards at the lifeguard station and available to be able to respond to the emergencies, rather than necessarily having them act in the lifeguard stands, which gives the question as to whether it's how widespread is the coverage. So we're still working through the details on it, but I think the bottom line is that we recognize, at least in the short term, we need to be very aware of the need for additional resources to be allocated to the beach so that it is safe.
So folks, as soon as we find out the details, certainly we'll be made aware of it, and we'll get it out to you in the form of one of our beach blasts, so that you'll be aware of how the patrolling is going on. So I have one last task, and that is I'm going to ask Reese and Judy if they would be so kind as to draw the final 2 winners. So I'm going to start with Reese. This is going to be the second prize, which will be a 3-year free membership. I'm not sure if that's the second prize or... So Reese? I don't think we have.
I don't have my glasses. I'm going to have to give it back to you, Rich.
Yeah. This is the definition of the blind leading the blind. Red ticket 5411105. All right, and last but not least, the first prize being the 4-year Chapeau membership. Mayor Judy.
Red ticket, because I 541106.
Great. So if you have it,
Does
great.
somebody have that? I'm actually pretty sure that that's mine, to be honest. And it's down there in my purse. But I remember thinking 1106 because that's in Avalon, they're District 11, 1106. It struck me 1106. So what are the chances of that? I pulled my own.
There you go. Well done. Well done. I'll take that. So look, folks, if you would take a moment, thank Mayor Judy, Davies-Dunhour.
Thank you all.
For the time.
Have a wonderful and safe summer.
Appreciate it. Folks, thank you very much for coming. We'll see you all in September, second Saturday of September at this point. We'll get the word out to you. Have a great summer.